Okay, so today we are just going to look at different types of graphs. And I'm just going to take you through some examples and have you work through some on your own. This first graph that we have here is a line graph. As you can tell, we have a coordinate plane, an x and a y axis, where we have, here's our x-axis, here's our y-axis, right here. And each of those axes tells us different things about what's going on in the graph. And the title, of course, up here tells us what we're actually looking at. So we're looking at the distance recorded during a sprint race. So what I want you to do is think logically here and look at the graph. And if we're reading our graph, we're starting down here. And the question is going to ask you, what is happening in the graph, right? So here's we have our line graph, the distance they've traveled. So it looks like this race is a 300-foot race, a 300-feet race, and it takes approximately 10 to 12 seconds to finish it. So look at how the line is moving. And what I want you to do is take a second and describe what's happening during this time on the graph. What's it represent and what's actually happening using what the graph shows and what you know logically about what is happening during a sprint race of 300 feet. So go ahead, pause the video and fill that out. I'm not going to give you the answer. I think you can just look at it and kind of figure out what exactly is going on. Okay, the second thing that we are going to look at is a histogram. A histogram is a bar graph, displays data of frequency distribution. Frequency means how many times something happens. Okay, and it uses vertical bars to represent the frequency. It's usually used for visually displaying the shape of the data and easily determining some information about the data at a quick glance. So if you notice what you have down here, these are going to be our ranges here. So like this goes from 60 to 65. And then that says that there are 3 trees, heights of black cherry trees. 3 trees that have a height between 60 and 65. There are 3 between 65 and 70. There are 8. And then there are 10. And then it looks like, is that a 4? I think that looks like it's a 4 and 2. So it tells us here's the range, and then this tells us how often it actually happens. So let's do one together here, and then I'm going to have you do the one on the right by yourself, okay? So let's first start off with Mrs. Hopkins recorded her students' final exam scores in the frequency table below. Here's our interval, okay? And so here's our interval. So basically this is like, you know, C's and D's, C's and B's, or no, that would be D's, C's, B's, and A's is what it looks like. And then this is just count, she kept a tally as she went of how kids did. And then notice there's 5 tally marks, 4 tally marks, 9 tally marks, 6 tally marks. So this is the information that we are going to use, these 2 columns. So what we're going to do to make our frequency table, okay, across the bottom is going to be our scores, okay, because that's the final exam scores. So the scores, oops, the daisies, the scores will go across the bottom. And then we are going to use like the number of scores, like how many times each of them was in there. Okay, so let's start here. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 intervals that we need to put on there. So I'm just going to put little 4 sections in here. Okay, so in this first section, we're going to use 61 to 70. Okay, so I'm going to use 61 to 70 goes here, 71 to 80 goes here, 81 to 90 goes here, and 91 to 100. Again, all that is these intervals that are listed on the right. And then I'm going to use how many times that actually happens. Well, between 61 and 70, there were 5. So let's label up the side here. We would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it looks like there was 5 that were between 61 and 70. So I'm going to go to 5. I'm going to draw my bar and then I'm just going to fill it in. I'm going to use a highlighter to fill it in because it'll fill in faster. Okay, and then I'm going to go into my 71 to 80 bar, and it looks like there was 4, so I'm going to go to 4, make my bar, and then I'm going to highlight, and you can use different colors if you want to, or however you want to design it. And then the next one had 9, so we're up here at 9, like so, and we're just going to fill it in and make it pretty as we can. And then our last one, that high grade of an A, 91 to 100, there was 6 of them. So we're going to come across to 6, come down, and there's a couple of extra little, there's a little extra space on the right there, which is no big deal. So what you are going to do, now that we've kind of done one together, here's a list up here of all of the temperatures in the month of April. There's 30 days, there's 30 temperatures. You are just going to keep a tally. You're going to go one at a time. First one is 41. You'd put a tally in that first 40 to 44 column. And so you're going to keep a tally, and then you're going to count how many tally marks are in each. You're going to come down here, and you are going to make your own frequency table that shows you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranges. Okay, so you're going to have 6 bars this time, and you're just going to draw and label the axes and all that kind of stuff of your own histogram. So that's going to be your first homework assignment, or first homework problem, is to complete this one on your own. Okay, and then a circle graph. Okay, a circle graph or pie chart represents the part of a whole. Quite often it is given as a percent. Okay, and the segments segments are arranged in a clockwise formation. The pie chart is easy to compare. Subjects presented neat, easy way to understand. This is not in color, but you have this circle graph, and as you can see, everything, it's kind of hard to read, but this is 40%, 25%, 10%, 9%, 14%, and then this little guy up here is 2%. Those numbers are kind of blurry in there. I am not going to answer these questions for you. Those questions are going to be part of your homework, but I'm going to do a couple of examples that are similar to them. Okay, so the first question says, what is their monthly house payment? So that says 40% of their income is spent on their house payment. Okay, we are going to assume, because it says so, that they make $3,500 a month. Okay, so if we wanted to say, let's say we wanted to know how much do they spend on food? Okay, so we know that 25% is spent on food, so we're going to have 25%, but whenever we do numbers with percents, we never use a percent, we use a decimal, so we do that by moving it to the left, and then we're finding that percent out of the whole, which is $3,500. When we multiply those two together, we find that they spend approximately $875 a month on food. Okay, we could also think, all right, what about utilities? How much do they spend on utilities? Well, if you look, utilities is 9%, so we're going to make sure we write that as a decimal. And they still have $3,500 total that they're spending. So if they spent 9% on utilities, that's like gas, electric, phone, that kind of a thing, they would be spending approximately $315 per month. Okay. And then what if I want to spend, so right now I want to spend $300 on food. Okay. What if I only want to spend $300 on food? What percent would that be? So $300 on food. What percent is that of my income? Okay, well that means kind of like what we did. If I want to spend $300 total on my food, that is what percent of $3,500? So I'm going to take $3,500 and multiply it by the percent, just like we did above. And so this is going to be my percent that I'm going to spend on food. So to figure that out, I'm just going to divide by $3,500 on both sides. And 300 divided by 35, x equals 0.086. Which means that if I want to spend $300 on food, I can only use about 9%, 8.6%. Okay, we'll erase that here. I can only use 8.6% of my budget on food if I only want to spend $300. As opposed to what we looked at before, food was 25%, and it was a big chunk of change, right? Our food we set up here was $875 a month. So trying to only spend $300 a month on food might be a bit of a stretch. But that's how we would find out what percent we would have if we only wanted to spend a certain amount of money, which you're going to need that idea to do that last question on your homework. So I also want you to answer these questions before you go ahead and submit it. That's going to be part of your homework as well. And now we have one more type of graph. Okay, a pictograph, right? A pictograph is just basically uses pictures to represent several things. It could be ages, people, that kind of thing. Okay, so like in this example up here, voter turnout by age, 1996 federal election. Each of these little people stands for 2 million voters. So if you look, like in the age 18 to 20, there'd be 2 and then a half, which would be like 3 million people. This one would be like 2, 4, 6, 7 million people in that age group. Apparently 25 to 44 is a big age group. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40. And then a half person would be 41 million. So basically each little human person counts for 2 million. If it's a half, it counts as 1 million. So what I want you to do is basically just apply that down here and go ahead and answer the questions down there based on the pictograph about the lifespan of garbage and recycling and things like that. So if you notice, anytime you have a pictogram, there's always a key here on the right that kind of helps you to make sure you know what each of those little pictures actually stands for. So go ahead and make sure you finish this part as well. And once you are done, please submit to Reading and Interpreting Graphs. In Schoology. All right, good luck.